Look, I've been observing species across 17 galaxies for the better part of 3 centuries. And I thought I'd seen everything, really, I did. But then the Galactic Council decided to invite humans to the Interstellar Summit on Kepler 4042b. And well, let me tell you, that's when things got interesting, to put it mildly. The summit was supposed to be straightforward. 43 species gathering under the twin suns of Kepler 442b to discuss trade routes, resource allocation, and the usual diplomatic nonsense that keeps civilizations from blasting each other into cosmic dust. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. The humans arrived in their sleek, silver transport vessel. Nothing fancy, but functional. And the moment they stepped out onto the landing platform, I knew something was off. Not dangerous off, mind you, but peculiar. Their delegation consisted of 5 representatives. A woman named Kavitha Reddy, who seemed to be in charge. A man called Dmitry Volkov, with shoulders that could probably support a small spacecraft. Another woman, Yuki Tanaka, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. A younger man named Olu Adayemi, who kept grinning like he knew a secret. And finally Shaban O'Brien, whose red hair practically glowed under the twin suns like some kind of warning beacon. Now, here's where it gets good. Within the first hour of exposure to Kepler 42b's dual-star system, the humans started changing color. I'm not talking subtle here. I'm talking their exposed skin went from various shades of beige and brown to this alarming pinkish red that looked downright painful. The other delegates noticed immediately. Ambassador Zyloth of the Crystalline Coalition. Yes, they're exactly as pretentious as their name suggests. Physically recoiled when he saw Shiovan's reddening face. By the great void, he hissed. His translucent body pulsing with what I can only describe as disgust mixed with pity. Are your people diseased? Should we quarantine them? Kavitha just smiled. This calm, knowing smile that should have been everyone's first warning, and said, "Oh, it's just sunburn. Happens when our skin gets too much ultraviolet radiation. Nothing to worry about." Nothing to worry about. Can you believe that? Their flesh was literally being damaged by stellar radiation, and she acted like it was equivalent to a minor inconvenience, like forgetting your datapad at home or something. The Vrexian delegate, Commander Thoraxis, leaned forward with his 4 arms crossed in what passed for concern assume his species. Your biology allows for radiation damage as a normal occurrence. How does your species survive on your homeworld? Well, Dmitry chimed in, his own nose starting to glow red. Our sun, we call it Sol, puts out quite a bit of UV radiation. Our planet doesn't have the thickest ozone layer compared to most habitable worlds, apparently, so we evolved with this. Let's call it a warning system. The burn tells us we've had too much exposure. Yuki adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, smart woman, and added, we developed melanin in our skin as protection. The more exposure our ancestors had to sunlight over generations, the more melanin they produced. It's actually quite elegant when you think about it. Elegant. She called radiation-induced cellular damage elegant. I was starting to understand why humans were so good at surviving catastrophes. They had a remarkable talent for reframing disasters as minor setbacks. The summit proceeded, but the other delegates couldn't stop staring at the humans' increasingly red skin. By the end of day 1, poor Shavan looked like she'd been dipped in crimson paint from the neck up. The whispers started circulating. How weak must their species be? Their own star damages them. What use could such fragile beings possibly have in galactic affairs? Oh, how spectacularly wrong they all were. The turning point came on day 3. We were in the middle of what I can only describe as the most mooring presentation in the history of interstellar diplomacy. The Matherian Commerce Guild explaining their new tariff structure in excruciating detail, when the alarms started blaring. Not the polite please evacuate calmly kind of alarms. I'm talking the everyone's probably going to die variety that makes your internal organs clench in existential terror. The facility's AI announced in that annoyingly calm voice that always delivers the worst news. Warning, Class 5 solar flare detected. Radiation levels increasing exponentially. Estimated time until lethal exposure, 14 minutes. Proceed to emergency shelters immediately. Chaos. Absolute, beautiful chaos. Delegates from 43 different species all tried to squeeze through the same corridors toward the radiation bunkers simultaneously. It was like watching a cosmic traffic jam where everyone's life hung in the balance. The architectural genius who designed the summit facility apparently never considered that all the radiation shielding was concentrated in a handful of underground bunkers that could maybe hold 2/3 of the attendees if everyone breathed shallowly and made friends real quick. Xyloth's crystalline body was already showing stress fractures from the increasing radiation. His species was particularly vulnerable to high-energy particles. The Rexians were stumbling, their exoskeletons beginning to crack and steam. Even I was feeling it, a deep, penetrating heat that promised cellular breakdown in short order. And the humans? The humans looked at each other with this expression. Not panic. Not even concern, really. It was more like calculation mixed with grim determination. And maybe just a hint of, oh, here we go again. Kavitha's voice cut through the screaming. How many won't fit in the bunkers? The facility AI responded. Approximately 137 individuals will remain exposed. Fatality rate 97% within the first hour. Right, Chauvin said, already pulling off her jacket despite her sunburned arms. Dmitry, Olu, start organizing the most vulnerable species first. Yuki, we need to find any additional shielding materials. Kavitha and I will coordinate triage. Commander Thoraxis, even in his deteriorating state, managed to rasp out. What are you doing? You're among the most vulnerable here. Your species can't even handle normal sunlight without injury. Olu actually laughed. This bright, genuine laugh that seemed completely inappropriate, given the circumstances. Oh, Commander, you've got it backwards. We get sunburned easily, sure, but we don't die from it. Our bodies repair the damage. It hurts like hell and peels like crazy, but we survive. This flare? He gestured at the orange-red glow starting to seep through the facility's windows. This is just really, really bad sunburn. The other delegates stared in disbelief as the 5 humans began physically pushing other species toward the bunker entrances. Dmitry lifted a Mytherian, who must have weighed at least 300 pounds, like they were made of feathers, and carried them toward safety. Yuki was wrapping reflective emergency blankets around crystalline delegates, whose bodies were starting to literally crack apart. Your cellular structure, Xyloth whispered as Shuban wrapped him in protective material, her own skin already blistering from the radiation. How can it withstand this? Evolution, baby, she grinned, though I could see the pain in her eyes. Our ancestors survived UV radiation that would have sterilized most planets. We developed repair mechanisms. DNA fixes itself. Cells regenerate. We don't recommend it as a lifestyle choice, but in a pinch, we can take a beating from stellar radiation and live to complain about it later. The next 12 minutes were perhaps the most harrowing I've ever witnessed. The humans worked with a synchronized efficiency that spoke to something deeper than training. It was like watching a predator species fall back on instincts honed over millions of years. They moved delegates, jury-rigged additional shielding from furniture and wall panels, and kited makeshift barriers using their own bodies when nothing else was available. Kavitha stood at the final bunker entrance, counting heads, her face now swollen and red, skin literally peeling in places. Okay, that's everyone. Seal it up. The facility AI chimed in. 5 human delegates remain outside protective shielding. Recommend immediate— Yeah, we know, Olu interrupted, settling down against a reinforced wall with the others. Just seal the bunkers. Keep everyone else safe. I watched from inside the bunker. Yes, I'll admit I was safely tucked away as the humans sat together, backs against the wall while the solar flares full force slammed into the facility. The external sensors showed radiation levels that should have been instantly lethal to any carbon-based life form. The kind of energy that rewrites DNA on contact, that turns cells into soup, that makes biology simply— Through the reinforced windows, we could see them. Dmitry had his arm around Yuki. Olu was making jokes. We couldn't hear them, but we could see him laughing. Kavitha and Shaban were holding hands, faces turned toward the stellar fury, like they were basking on a beach somewhere instead of being bombarded with enough radiation to sterilize a small moon. 23 minutes. That's how long the flare lasted. 23 minutes of exposure that killed every microorganism on the facility's exterior, that melted viewing ports, that registered on sensors as equivalent to standing on the surface of a star for nearly half an hour. When the radiation levels finally dropped to survivable levels and we opened the bunkers, I honestly expected to find 5 human-shaped piles of ash, maybe some scattered bones if we were lucky. What I found instead was 5 humans sitting exactly where we'd left them, looking like they'd been left in an oven for too long. Their skin was red, not the light pink from before, but this angry, blistered crimson that looked like it should be accompanied by screaming. Patches of skin were already peeling off in sheets, revealing raw pink tissue underneath. Their eyes were swollen, their lips cracked and bleeding, and every exposed inch of them looked like a medical emergency waiting to happen. And they were joking. 10 credits says, "I peel worse than you," Olu was saying to Dmitri, examining his own arms with clinical detachment. "You're on," Dmitri replied, his voice hoarse but steady. "I've got Russian winter skin, peels like birch bark in spring." Kavitha stood up, actually stood up on legs that should have been non-functional, and surveyed the crowd of stunned delegates emerging from the bunkers. "Everyone okay? Anyone need medical attention?" The silence was profound. You could have heard a cork decay. Finally, Siloth, whose crystalline form had been on the verge of shattering, stepped forward, his body still showing stress fractures, but intact thanks to the human's protection. His voice came out as barely a whisper. You're alive. You're standing. How is this possible?" Yuki shrugged, then winced at the movement. "Like we said, really bad sunburn. We'll need some aloe vera, probably some pain medication, and we'll be peeling for weeks, but we'll survive. Our cells are already repairing the DNA damage. Give us a few days and we'll look almost normal again." "A few days?" Commander Thoraxis's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "That level of radiation exposure should have destroyed your cellular structure at the molecular level. Even with advanced medical intervention, recovery should take months, if not." "Our sun tried to kill us for millions of years," Siobhan interrupted, her swollen face managing a smile. "Didn't take. We got tougher. Evolution's a hell of a thing." I moved closer, my scientific curiosity overriding my shock. "Your DNA repair mechanisms. They must be operating at an efficiency level we've never documented in any species. And your pain tolerance." I gestured at their obvious agony that they were treating like a minor annoyance. "Oh, it hurts," Kavitha admitted, accepting a bottle of water from a Metherian medic who looked at her like she was witnessing a miracle. "Hurts like absolute hell, actually. But pain is just information, right? It tells us we're damaged but doesn't tell us we're dying. We learned the difference a long time ago." The summit changed after that. The whispers shifted from mockery to something else entirely, something that looked a lot like fear mixed with respect, and maybe just a touch of horrified fascination. The humans had taken radiation exposure that would have liquefied most species and walked away with what they called a really bad day at the beach. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the humans didn't stop working. Over the next 3 days, while their skin peeled off in grotesque sheets, while new skin grew underneath at a rate that fascinated the medical teams, they continued attending sessions, negotiating treaties, and participating in discussions like nothing had happened. Dmitri showed up to a resource allocation meeting with strips of dead skin hanging from his forehead. He casually brushed them away mid-sentence, while explaining Earth's proposal for asteroid mining operations. The turning point in the summit came during a heated debate about territorial disputes in the Epsilon sector. The Vrexian hegemony and the Crystalline Coalition were at an impasse, both claiming rights to a cluster of mineral-rich planets, and tensions were escalating toward the kind of confrontation that starts wars. Olu, still visibly recovering from the radiation exposure, his dark skin showing patterns of healing that looked like a topographical map, stood up and asked a simple question. "What if both your species are too focused on what you can take from those planets instead of what you can build together?" The room went quiet. Xyloth's body flickered with irritation. Easy for you to say when your species isn't invested in the outcome. You're right, Kavitha replied, standing beside Olu, her own healing skin a patchwork of red, pink, and brown. We're not invested. We're new to all this. But we've spent our entire history fighting over resources on a single planet, killing each other over land and water and energy sources. And you know what we learned? Conflict is expensive. Cooperation is profitable. Not just economically, though, that too, but in terms of survival. Shuovan pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history, and I'll admit, it was brutal. Wars that killed millions, environmental disasters, nuclear standoffs, extinctions. But then, woven through all that darkness, were threads of something else. Cooperation after catastrophes, unlikely alliances, species saved from the brink, technologies shared, enemies becoming partners when survival demanded it. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen different ways, Yuki explained, her scientific mind organizing the data into patterns. Nuclear weapons, climate change, biological warfare, resource depletion, pick your apocalypse. But we're still here because we learned slowly, painfully, that the alternative to cooperation is extinction. You're both arguing over who gets to mine those planets, but the radiation levels there are high enough that both your species would need extensive shielding and limited exposure time, right? Both delegates nodded reluctantly. Humans could work those mines, Dimitri said simply. We can handle the radiation exposure that your people can't. You provide the technology and transportation, we provide the labor in hazardous environments. Everyone profits. Nobody dies. And you two don't have to blow each other up over a territorial dispute. See? Cooperation. The Vrexian commander's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Your species would willingly expose yourselves to harmful radiation for profit sharing, and the opportunity to be useful in galactic affairs, Kavitha added. Look, we know we're the new kids here. We know we're seen as weak because we burn under normal sunlight, but that weakness, she gestured at her still healing skin, that's actually our strength. We adapted to survive on a planet that kept trying to kill us. That makes us perfect for the jobs nobody else can do. I watched Xyloth's crystalline structure shift through colors, a sign of deep contemplation in his species. You would position yourselves as what? Galactic hazmat workers. Among other things, Olu grinned. That infectious smile that made it hard not to like him despite Devitt fate. We're also pretty good at fighting, diplomacy, engineering, art, cooking, and apparently surviving things that should definitely kill us. We're versatile like that. The agreement that came out of that summit reshaped galactic politics. The Epsilon sector dispute was resolved with humans as the mediating factor. Literally, as in they agreed to work the hazardous mining operations neither species could safely handle. But more than that, it established humanity's role in the galactic community. The species that thrived where others couldn't survive, that turned weaknesses into advantages, that looked at impossible situations and shrugged before diving in anyway. 6 months later, I visited the mining operations in the Epsilon sector. The human workers there operated in radiation environments that would have killed me in minutes, and they did it with a casualness that still made my organs clench. They wore protective gear. Sure, but when I asked one worker, a woman named Fatima, who wasn't among the original delegates, about the risks, she just laughed. Yeah, we monitor our exposure carefully, rotate shifts to minimize damage, and everyone gets regular medical scans, she explained, while standing in radiation levels that made my sensors scream warnings. But honestly, I grew up in Perth, Australia. This is just like summer back home, except I get paid more and the view is better. The final revelation came when I was reviewing medical data from the Summit incident. The humans' cellular repair mechanisms weren't just efficient, they were aggressive. Their bodies didn't just fix radiation damage, they adapted to it, became more resistant to it with each exposure. It's like their biology said, "Oh, you want to kill me with radiation? Cute. Watch this," and then proceeded to build better defenses in real time. The report I filed with the Galactic Scientific Council included a new classification for humanity, Adaptive Survivor Class. with a special notation that their apparent vulnerabilities often masked extraordinary resilience. I recommended that other species stop assuming fragility based on superficial observations, because humans getting sunburned wasn't a sign of weakness. It was evidence of a species that had survived stellar punishment for so long they'd turned it into a minor inconvenience. The last time I spoke with Kavitha, she was leading a delegation to establish human colonies in 3 systems previously considered uninhabitable due to high radiation environments. Her skin had healed completely. You'd never know she'd been essentially cooked alive just months before. And she had that same calm smile I remembered from the first day at the summit. "You know what's funny?" she said as we reviewed the colonization proposals. "Everyone thought the sunburn was our weakness. Proof we couldn't handle galactic life. Turns out it was our resume, a demonstration that we could take punishment that would kill most species and walk away asking for seconds." I had to laugh at that, really laugh, something I don't do often. "Your species has a remarkable talent for turning disasters into opportunities." "We've had a lot of practice," she replied, pulling up data on the new colonies. "Earth gave us millions of years of hard lessons. Stellar radiation, ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, plagues. Our planet was basically trying to debug its life support systems while we were still living on it. We learned to adapt or die, and well," she gestured at the thriving human population now spreading across the galaxy. "We're not dead yet. And that, my friends, is how humanity went from being mocked for getting sunburned to becoming the galactic standard for operations in high-radiation environments." They looked at what should have been a fatal weakness, shrugged in that uniquely human way, and turned it into their greatest competitive advantage. So the next time you see a human with red, peeling skin and think they're fragile, remember that you're looking at a species whose biology treats stellar radiation as a training exercise. A species that survived so many attempts by their own sun to sterilize them that they evolved to just shake it off and keep going. Terrifying, really, when you think about it. Absolutely terrifying. And frankly, I'm glad they're on our side, because I've seen what happens to things that try to burn humanity down. Spoiler alert, the humans are still standing when the fire goes out, probably making jokes about how they need more aloe vera and asking what's for lunch. That's the thing about humans. They don't just survive the unsurvivable, they thrive in it, laugh about it, and then figure out how to profit from it. And if that's not the most terrifying and inspiring thing in the galaxy, I don't know what is.